Welcome to the Teach Joyfully podcast, where we talk about all things elementary teaching with some mom stuff thrown in. I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of five. I'll be your host. Thanks for joining me today.
All right, my friends, you know that I believe that being organized is essential to success in the classroom. Yes, you can simply limp along being disorganized, think it doesn't affect very much of your teaching, but it does. It affects your personal life, your stress level, and it impacts your students much more than you think it does. So, on that note, my guest today is Kelly Jackson. She's a former teacher of littles turned classroom organization coach. She is on a mission to help busy, overwhelmed teachers to create organized, safe, and well-managed classrooms that facilitate effective learning for their students and more time for themselves. And that's a win. So you might know her from the Simply Organized Teacher or the Simply Teach podcast. So welcome, Kelly. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for asking me to be on the show.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I think organization is super important for teachers because it gives us the gift of time.
Amen. Amen.
So let's just dive right in. So let's talk about, first of all, how disorganization affects us and our students.
Well, I think primarily we think of it affecting ourselves as teachers because we walk into our classroom in the morning and it's overwhelming, it's stressful. Like you said, the time situation is a really big factor, but there is a selfish part of being organized for ourselves. But I really do think that disorganization affects our kids, like you said, even more than we think it does, because the one thing that I've always recognized in my students, especially my students that might have challenging behavior issues or somewhere on the spectrum of some sort, that the more disorganized my classroom is, the more chaotic things are for them. You know, when I, as an adult, walk into a classroom that has every inch of the wall covered and just piles everywhere, I feel overwhelmed and stressed by that chaos. And I'm an adult and I can process and I can remove those things from what I'm trying to get out of my time in that classroom. But our kids, they're not that developed at that age. And I really think that disorganization leads to behavior issues with kids because when they don't have that sense of safety and not even organization, but I guess routines and structure, that affects their behavior and how they're going to engage with you in the class.
I agree 100%. And I would also agree, as I've said this many times before, when you plaster your classroom full of stuff, even if it's beautiful and you have taken all this time to decorate and make it gorgeous, but there is something on every single wall and it's covered and it might be gorgeous, it's stressful
Mhm.
because kids who have learning issues or behavior issues, that actually takes away their ability to focus.
Yes.
And it really gives them a lot of stress because it's sensory overload. And sensory overload in children is rampant these
Mhm.
days. So I agree 100%, 100%. So let's talk about the biggest trouble spots. When you talk to teachers about organization, you're helping a teacher get organized. What are typically, and I know it varies from person to person and classroom to classroom, but overall, I think you've seen some trends. So, what are the biggest trouble spots that you typically see?
What's funny is when people come to me for support with classroom organization, it's always with their stuff. It's never about the kids' stuff. It's always my teacher desk, my cabinets, my things that the teacher is interacting with on a daily basis, how I organize my lesson plans. Those are the things that I think get teachers hung up because as teachers, we're always going to put ourselves second, right? Our kids always come first. So even if our kids have some sort of organization or routines or structures or whatever, that's fine. But we don't have that in place for ourselves because at the end of the day, do we really want to spend our time straightening up our desk or getting our lesson plans ready for tomorrow, right? So I see a lot of teachers struggling. I would say the teacher desk is the number one spot. The teacher desk slash the U table or small group table, whatever it is, horseshoe table, whatever it is you want to call it, is where teachers struggle the most because that's where the piles of paper end up throughout the day and things just go there and live there forever and
Yeah.
causes that clutter.
Exactly, exactly. And it's easy to keep adding to the pile, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you put one more thing on, and I'll get to that on Thursday, or I'll get to that on Friday. I'm going to stay late this day and really do this, right? And then it's the next week, or something comes up. And if you're a teacher mom or dad, then you have all of that in addition. And the chances of you being able to stay late or do any of those things are really reduced. So
Mhm.
it just becomes a growing problem, doesn't it?
Yes, for sure.
And I would agree that just from past experience that the areas that we are in the most are obviously the ones that are going to be the trouble spots. Not to say it doesn't bleed into other areas because you may pull out that teacher manual and then don't put it back, or you may jam it back in the cabinet and then you can't find it. But I think that's very true. Those places where you interact the most are definitely going to be trouble spots. So interesting that it's always about the teacher's actual organization of themselves and not their students. I think if we aren't organized, we can't help our students organize. Don't you think that's true?
Yes, for sure.
And now, do you ever help teachers with organization for their students? Is that something that you do?
Yes, yes, I do for sure. I do help teachers with that. And there are teachers that do come for those needs. But I just see in general, like when I put out surveys to my audience, what do you want help with? They're always wanting help with their stuff because it does pile up so much and so frequently. But yes, they definitely still need help with student materials. And it's more of like the routines and the structures that the kids need for organization. Because what I teach and what I try to educate teachers on is like classroom organization is more than just what a classroom looks like. And I might be jumping ahead a little bit to a question you have later on, but I think that we get stuck in this idea that classroom organization is just about how something looks. But I think classroom organization is way more than just what meets the eye when somebody walks into your classroom. It's your time management and how you have your day structured, both as a teacher, but as a person, that is teaching. It's how you manage your classroom and not just behavior, but also routines and structures for the kids. So all of those things play into classroom organization. Whenever I work with teachers on getting their student stuff organized, it's a lot more of the routines and structures to keep kids accountable to the organization that we have set up in our classrooms.
Right. And you know what? I'm going to skip ahead since we're already talking about this. Let's just talk about that idea of how we let our students make our disorganization worse. And you're right. I think a classroom organization isn't just about the papers and the things and stuff like that. It's about how your classroom functions.
Yeah.
It is. And that encompasses so much, really, it does. So let's just talk about that. How do we let our students make that disorganization worse?
I think the biggest thing is by not utilizing our students and by putting it all on ourselves. I had a friend who we taught in the same grade level, and she would always come into my classroom. I think I had car duty and she had bus duty or something. We always had like the opposite duty. And she would come into my room after duty every day. And one day she walks in, I had this like big green fluffy chair, and she would just always sit in it. And she would say, "How is your room so clean at the end of the day?" And I was kind of baffled by that question. I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "I come back in and I have to pick this up, and there's crowns on the ground, and I have to push the desk back together." And I was like, "Your kids aren't doing that?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, there's your problem is you're not involving your kids in the process of organizing your classroom. You're taking that responsibility all on yourself." So I think the first mistake that teachers make is not utilizing their kids in the organization and the picking up and maintaining of your classroom. I think that's probably the first thing. If you're looking around and thinking, well, how can I get my kids to help in on this? You set the structure and the routine and how you want things to be organized. I don't think that the kids necessarily need to help you figure out where the pencils are going to go and where the crowns are going to go or any of that kind of stuff. But they do need to be responsible for putting the pencils back where they belong and sharpening the pencils at the end of the day. I think utilize your kids. It teaches them responsibility and takes a little bit of work off of your shoulders.
I think that it gives them some pride in their classroom too, and it makes you a cohesive unit. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a lot of reasons to do that, and we have classroom jobs. But one of the things that I always did in my classroom at the end of the day, we used to call it the 10-minute tidy. And it came from an old TV show, and I think it was called The Big Comfy Couch.
I've never heard anybody else talk about that show, but what are you talking about, from when you were a kid or from like when your kids were kids?
When my
Yep.
kids were kids, yes.
That was like
Yeah.
kind of, looking back, a creepy show, a little bit weird, but I loved that show as a kid.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, she did a 10-second tidy at the end of every episode. And I took that with my own kids and made it the 10-minute tidy. And we would do the 10-minute tidy at the end of our day at home. So, because I can't stand clutter. And so I would do a 10-minute tidy with them. And the goal was, if you touched it, you dealt with it. And so you had to go through and pick up as much stuff and put it away where it belonged, not just like throwing things around, but putting it away where it belonged, clean everything up and get it put away. And we would set a timer, 10 minutes, ready, go. And everyone, including me, had to do that. So I started doing that in my classroom with the 10-minute tidy at the end of the day. And that meant I'm cleaning up my teacher space and they're cleaning up their spaces. And when I would walk out the door for bus duty or whatever I had, everything was already clean. And I came back into the classroom and I didn't have to look in my classroom and go, ugh, I got to clean up before I could even do any planning or writing or anything else. And so that 10-minute tidy was a game changer. So funny that you remember that show.
Yeah, she would like lay on the clock, right? And like move her leg. Like, she was very flexible.
Right.
Move her leg around. Yeah. I used classroom jobs in my classroom, and I think I had it set up to where almost every kid had a job. I had that many classroom jobs because a lot of them, their job was solely something that happened at the end of the day during our cleanup time. Two things I wanted to say while you were talking that made me think. One is, and I'm sure teachers already know about this, but in case you don't, my favorite thing to do, especially when we had a day of like cutting and pasting and all that kind of stuff, and there was just trash everywhere, is mystery trash. And so I would look around the classroom and spot a piece of trash, random, this orange crown sitting under table 5, whatever. And I would set the timer for 2 minutes and everybody just go around and pick up every piece of trash you can find on the ground. And whoever found the mystery trash got some kind of prize, even if it was just a buck, which was what I called my classroom money. Even if it was the buck, it wasn't anything that cost me any time or money. And honestly, every teacher does this, so I shouldn't feel ashamed, but half the time I just paid attention to the kid who was picking up the most, or a kid who hadn't been rewarded that day and was like, oh, so-and-so found the mystery trash, he gets the buck. If I was trying to clean up something, I didn't have my eyes on the kids the whole time because they didn't know what the mystery trash was, what it was. But I think, going back to your original question, like, how do we use our kids? And I was talking about the mistake of not using our kids. The other mistake I see teachers making is consistency. So like you're saying with the 10-minute tidy, is that needs to be something that is done every single day. Not even just that, but like holding kids to the expectation of, you have this classroom job and I expect it to be done to this level of expectation or of cleanliness. And if it is not, then you're going to do it again, or there's going to be some kind of, not consequence in the sense of like a punishment consequence, but we're going to have a conversation or whatever. Kids need to be held accountable for what it is that you're asking them to do in your classroom. And when we're not consistent, kids, they're so brilliant. They pick up on that. They know if you're not going to hold them accountable to whatever it is that you ask them to do, and then they don't do it.
100%. Yeah, I agree. It's not always that they're trying to get away with something. It's just a lot of times they wouldn't even think to do it on a regular basis. But
Right.
if you are so very consistent and it happens every single day, they won't even forget. When they have a sub, they're going to just do it, even with the sub there. Oh, we have to do this. My teacher expects this, because that's the expectation in the classroom. And there's a level of pride in that. There is a level of, we're a team. This is what we do. And those are the classrooms, like if you've ever subbed, those are the classrooms you want to go to. Those are the classrooms that are such a joy to go in and sub in too, because whenever we've moved to a new state, I've always subbed first. So I kind of figured out which school district I wanted to be in. And so it kind of gave me a little glimpse into the school districts to decide, where do I really want to teach? And and where do I want to put my kids? It's really important. I think it's one of those things that makes a big difference for me, and eye-opening for sure. It's eye-opening. And you learn a lot from other teachers by doing that as well, because Teachers are creative, amazing souls, and they come up with some amazing solutions to problems that you would never think of in many ways. Okay, so we talked about lots of things. I kind of skipped. So let's go back to ways that teachers get bogged down when it comes to organizing.
When I talk with teachers, the main two things that I see is first, where do I even start? It's so overwhelming. Maybe you took time at the beginning of the year to get your class organized, but then the year happened and everything kind of went out the window. So, like, where do I even begin is one hang up I see. And the other would be with this Pinterest and Instagram perfection that we've created in the teacher world of kind of what I was saying earlier, that organization means that it has to look a certain way and that I have to go out and buy all the matching bins and they have to be the correct color palette for this year's whatever. That we put this expectation on teachers of like, this is what a good teacher looks like. Is this Pinterest or Instagram perfection? And I just don't think that's the case. I think organization helps you be a better teacher, but I don't think having the most perfect or well decorated or even the most organized classroom is going to make you be a better teacher. I think those are some vanity things that we put on teachers that I wish we could just back away from.
Oh, I agree. And I do agree that it's the matching bins and all of this, and you don't need that. You can use old boxes, you can use all kinds of things to get the same organization and it works. And if you really want it to match, you can work towards that later on. But sometimes you just have to start.
I do think that there is some validity to like what I teach on my blog and in my course is that, yeah, the things that you're going to have out in the classroom, the bins that you're maybe putting your library books in, yeah, eventually those should all be matching, whether it's in color or size or shape or something. They should be coordinating because that's going to help with that visual clutter and overstimulation. So I do think there is validity in things matching and being cohesive, but I don't think that you need to expect, on Friday afternoon, you decide I'm going to organize my classroom and by Monday morning, it's going to look perfect or, everything's going to be matching and color coded and all of that. I think that if that is what you're trying to go to, you're missing out on a lot of benefits of being organized.
For sure, for sure. Well, and there's lots of ways to look at organization. When you look on that on the surface like that, and you're saying, oh, this looks so organized. Well, that might look organized, but are you really organized where you're teaching better? Isn't that the
Mhm.
goal? Is
Right.
that you're teaching better, that you're calmer, that you have a personal life? Those are the goals. You have to kind of define your goals
Mhm.
before you actually go into that organization journey because the reality is you can get hung up on the Pinterest perfect and not realize that in fact you're not actually achieving the goals you really do want.
Yeah, that's a really good point that
Yeah.
when you're setting out to organize, what are you doing this for? Are you doing this for yourself? Are you doing it for your kids? Are you doing it for other people that are coming into your classroom? You have to decide that for yourself.
Right. Well, and are you trying to gain more personal time? Are you trying to reduce your stress? Are you trying to help with behavior issues in your classroom? I mean, what are your goals? You might have multiple goals, but
Mm.
those are valid goals in organizing. And I don't think we always think of it that way. We always think, I just want to be organized. Well, no, that's not actually the end goal. Yes, that is the end goal, but there's some sub goals in there that
Mhm.
really are driving why you want to be organized. And I think that is something we need to deal with. Going back to Pinterest, the
Mhm.
other part I think that I see, because I do more of the instructional coaching, and that part I see, you can become bogged down and disorganized with the ideas. There's
Yeah.
so many cute, fabulous, wonderful ideas, and I'm all about pare it down, pare it down, pare it down. Go back to the basics, really get that solid. And then if you want to pick one or two fun things to do, that's okay, but you got to do that later. You can't
Mhm.
do that first and then do the rest of it. It's just like organization. You got to get the basics down and then you can make it pretty.
Right. Yeah, that's so true.
So, where would you say that teachers need to begin when they're feeling just completely buried in disorganization?
I guess I have two answers to this question. First is you just have to start. I know that's like, really, Kelly, that's the answer you're going to give. But you just have to start somewhere, and ideally start somewhere small. So if your classroom is feeling really overwhelming, what is either an area that is small, like physically, this one shelf in this cabinet, I can start with that. Or something that is like, okay, my desk is maybe a little bit of a bigger spot, but I don't have too much on it. It needs to be cleaned up, tidied up kind of thing. Start somewhere small so that it's like that snowball effect, right? You do one little thing and then it snowballs into the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, with the understanding that this isn't just going to completely change overnight. We have to give ourselves some grace for that. The other thing is, I always say, make the plan and work the plan. Obviously, I'm a planner and organizer by nature, so that's just kind of my default. But I think whenever we are wanting to start tackling something as big as a classroom organization project, and it can feel so overwhelming, where do we start? You've got to come back to the basics of making a plan of, like you were saying, what are your goals that you want to achieve with this organization? And then what are some routines and structures that I can put into place to help me meet that goal or to help me work towards that goal? So I've given you the link that you can share with your listeners, a free resource for teachers to help them establish their classroom organization routines. Because for me, organization is really simple. When I feel stressed or overwhelmed, my first thought is set a timer for 10 minutes. Let me go just pick up the house, move my body, put some things away, clear my head, right? But that is not what everybody thinks. If organization is important to us, we want the time and the better behavior and all those things. If we want those things, then we're going to have to put some structures and routines into our daily practices to help us get there. So that resource would be a great place for teachers to go and start just kind of mapping out what is important to me. What days am I going to spend working on this? Where am I going to go to get ideas for how to organize this certain area or whatever? That resource would be really helpful for teachers.
I agree. I think that's going to be a wonderful resource for teachers. It's a great place to start because you really are mapping out a plan and you're not going into it saying, I'm going to do it all today or I'm doing it all this weekend, which is overwhelming. And when we do it that way, sometimes it doesn't stay, I think.
Yeah.
I think when we really invest the time and do it over a period of time, we're being very thoughtful with it. And it's more likely that we're going to maintain it. So, talking about that, how do you help teachers stay organized? What tips do you have to help teachers stay organized? Because getting organized is one problem, but staying organized is a totally different animal.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of teachers, when I talk to them, it's like they get it organized at the beginning of the year, but then as the year goes on, it falls off. And so when it comes to staying organized, part of it is just having those routines in your daily and weekly plans. I have a blog post called 5 Tips for Staying Organized for Teachers, and we can run through the 5 things that I talk about in that blog post really quick. So the first is, I joke, it's my number one rule for being organized, and that's that everything needs to have a home. Everything needs a place to live, even if that place that it's living is the box that's like, I don't know where this stuff lives. Well, at least there is a place for it to go, because the idea is that you want anything that comes into your classroom, you don't want to have to just lay it on the desk and figure it out later. You want to know exactly what cabinet it goes in, what shelf it goes in, what drawer it goes in, whatever. So that would be first, is give everything a home. Second, kind of tying into that, is utilizing boxes and bins, and those are your homes. That is what you are using to give things homes. And like we said, they don't have to be these beautiful matching boxes and bins, especially when you're organizing the inside of your cabinets. Amazon boxes is where it's at. My husband and I just moved back from a 2.5 year job assignment overseas. And so we're just now, settling back into our house. And of course, I watched the home edit when it first came out. And I went to my sister's house, who has it perfectly decorated and organized. And she has all the matching bins with the home edit labels. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. It's like organization heaven, right?
Yeah. And then I open up my cabinet. It's like this Amazon box and that Amazon box and whatever. And it doesn't look as pretty. In due time, I will probably switch out those boxes. But in the meantime, I just need to get my house organized, because like you were saying, we put all this time into getting things organized, but it doesn't stay. We're still figuring out this house. We've been living in another house for the past 2.5 years. I'm still figuring out, okay, I have this stored here. Is that going to work there? And it's the same thing in our classrooms. you spend all this time putting things where you think they might go. And then you get into the groove of the year and you're like, wait, why did I put that item all the way over there when I'm using it every day, all day? And you have to figure those things out. So,
I think this really is true because you do have to live in a space. It's just like when you move into a new house and you start to put things away in your kitchen, and then you realize later that that doesn't work there and you need to move where the silverware is, right? If you create all these perfect bins and solutions that you bought specifically for specific areas, and now all of a sudden it doesn't work because you need to move that to a different area, well, it's better to live in temporary digs for a while until you figure it out. Then you can make it pretty.
yeah. So use those Amazon boxes, use whatever it is that you have. The inside of my cabinets in my classroom, they were organized, don't get me wrong, but nothing about them was matching. Because when somebody walks into my classroom, they're not opening up my cabinets and looking in them. The point is that the cabinet is organized for myself. So, first tip, homes for everything. Second tip, bins. Third is, and we kind of just talked about this, but your cabinets are the backbone of your classroom. If your cabinets are not organized, you're going to have a really hard time organizing anything else in your classroom, because cabinets should be where things are living and storing. If you have them, of course, if you don't have them, then we need to talk about other solutions for creating quote unquote cabinets. But getting your cabinets organized, I would say, is one of the top priorities when you are setting up your classroom. Before any of the setting up stations or putting up bulletin boards, get those cabinets organized. Organize your cabinets by theme. So, like, this cabinet is all of my math manipulatives. This cabinet is all of my ELA, whatever. This is social studies. Give cabinets themes. Tip number 4 is paper, which is probably the biggest question I get. How do I organize the papers? And I notice that even with home organization stuff too. When I'm looking at home organization stuff, people are always asking about papers at home. Papers are just overwhelming.
Even if it's digital, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
you might be getting everything digitally, but that problem of where to put things is still there.
Yeah. I think digital organization, which we haven't even touched on, but is like a whole other beast that needs to be tackled within classroom organization. So, organizing your paper, creating routines. Everything I teach is about structures and routines. And we can share this too with your listeners, but I also have a free resource for creating a paper routine for your kids. So, like, every paper that your kid touches, you need to have a mapped out plan of, like, where does that paper go and how does it get back to the kid eventually? Because when you have all of those things written out, that's where that time piece comes in of saving the time. You're not having to figure out, where does this go, or where did I put this, because it's following this well laid out path that you already created. And then the last thing would be to keep a notepad of paper for your brain dump at any given time, to keep it near you, because classroom teachers are like some of the busiest people in the world, I think. I mean, maybe I'm biased because I was a classroom teacher, but just the amount of things that are going through your brain at any given time is just enormous. So, having a spot where anything that comes to mind in the moment, you write it down. It doesn't mean you deal with it. It doesn't even mean you take care of it that week. I'm a big believer that a brain dump and a to-do list are two different things, but having a place where you can house all of those thoughts. So at least you can get them out of your brain and worry about it at a later time. So those would be my tips. And of course, on the blog, I go into them in way more detail if teachers wanted to go and read it. And I think I might have even made it into a podcast episode.
I agree 100%. I love a to-do list, but only if it's very, very targeted. I don't like big, long to-do lists. And I do think a brain dump on a regular basis is a good thing. And even I remember as a kid, my mom always had a pad of paper that sat on the counter, and that was her brain dump. I never thought of it that way, but that was her brain dump. That's where she wrote down everything that she was thinking of, something she needed at the market, whatever it was. She needed to call the doctor, all those little thoughts and everything, so that those thoughts weren't lost, but she could deal with them later when she had time. Because we do live our lives in the classroom at 100 miles per hour. I say that all the time, but it's really true. You are making snap decisions on a minute or second by second basis. And if those thoughts are gone, they're gone. And some of them are important. So it's one of those things. I think if you have a place to put them, I think that's a brilliant idea, just to have somewhere to put them, and you can go back later. Obviously, you can create a routine for when you're going to go deal with all that. And that can be another routine. It can be once a month. that you deal with that. It could be once a week that you deal with that, however you decide. But if you have it, then you can deal with it. And sticky notes, I love sticky notes, but that's the worst idea ever. Let me tell you, they're in your hair, they're all over the place.
So when I actually wrote this post, I was like, you need to have a to-do list at all times sitting by your desk. And I made the mistake of confusing a to-do list and a brain dump, because what I noticed when I was in the classroom, and I didn't realize this till actually after I left the classroom, is I had a to-do list slash brain dump in two places. One was the notepad or whatever on my desk, and the other was just like my notes app or whatever on my phone. So that way, when I was on the go, I had a place, and then I would compile them, whatever. But what I realized after I left the classroom was that my problem while I was in the classroom is that I was confusing that as a to-do list. And so then thinking every day I had to take care of those things. And that is where I think, again, if we go back to one of the very first things we talked about is like saving time and the purpose of organization, you have to create a to-do list that is manageable. And when you have this just never ending list of things, right? You cross one thing off, you add two or three more. So I try to encourage teachers to be really cautious of keeping a to-do list separate from a brain dump list,
And
because a brain dump list will never be done.
right. And I believe in a daily to-do list. Start fresh each day,
Mhm.
that you don't carry it over. You may carry something from a to-do list and put it on a new to-do list, but you don't carry the whole list over.
Mhm.
You start fresh every day. That this is not, and I like to keep my to-do list, my actual to-do list, to just a few really essential things.
Mhm.
So 3, 5 tops, and that's really pushing it.
Yeah.
And just keep it very simple so that when you are going to go and tackle your to-do list, you can actually tackle it.
And get it done, because that feeling of like crossing something off your to-do list, when you can complete your to-do list at the end of the day, the feeling is just amazing, right? We all know what that feels like. And so set yourself up for success by giving yourself an actual to-do list that you can complete, not this never-ending brain dump.
If you have a to-do list that just keeps going on, you're more likely to do nothing than you are to do anything.
Yeah.
It's just going to look overwhelming again. And so if you have a very short to-do list, it's now a doable list. And having a doable list is you're more likely to accomplish that. You are setting yourself up for success. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Well, there you go. There's your marching orders, my friends. You've got some work to do. Now is the perfect time to even start thinking about that, because it's summer and it is your perfect time to start making that plan in order to get organized. And if you aren't doing that now, you are missing out on some of the best ways to set up your school year for success. Really, truly. And it's getting that plan together, getting your organization together, but also getting that plan together for your long-term organization and using all those tips for how to stay organized. So I think that's really important. And Kelly, you have actually a system for doing this. So what is your system?
Yeah. So inside my course, the Organized Teacher Framework, I talk teachers through the process of setting up a classroom in an organized way. Because when I started working with teachers and with the podcast and the blog and all that kind of stuff, I noticed that teachers are always jumping to that last step of the decorating, right? We come into our classroom and we're so excited. We want to decorate it and get it looking great. And those are good things, because we want to create a classroom that is welcoming and inviting to our students. But as I talked about earlier, I think there's so much more to classroom organization. So inside of my framework, I teach this cake method, which is like the most basic way I could think to explain it. But basically, all of these layers that build on top of each other. So coming up with your time management and self-care plan, because those are things that go out the window the day school starts, right? And so helping teachers develop those plans ahead of time is really important to me. And then we talk about classroom management and all the things that go into creating a classroom where kids can be a part of the organization and be a part of maintaining a well-run classroom. Then we get into the organization and the decorating. So the course is open, I believe right now, when this is going live, June 28th through July 7th. I've got it available for purchase. And for anybody who purchases by July 7th, they're also going to get a additional whole module lesson, whatever, on actually getting set up for just the first day of school. So like coming up with your first day plans and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would love to invite your listeners to come and check it out. And of course, I've got tons of free resources on my website, over 100 podcasts and blogs, so don't feel that people need to come and just buy my course from me. But I would, of course, love to be able to help teachers get their classrooms organized, because I think that when we can have organized spaces and we can have classrooms that we're excited to go to and we can leave and feel we're not taking a ton of work home, I think that is how we keep teachers in the profession, which I think is something you and I talked about the very first time we talked, is how important it is that we keep good teachers in the education field. And I believe that organization is one of the ways that we can do that.
For sure. So how can my listeners find you?
You can find me anywhere at The Simply Organized Teacher. So that's my website. That's my Instagram, just at The Simply Organized Teacher. Come find me, hang out with me, and I would love to interact with you.
Awesome. Well, honestly, I believe that staying organized is self-care. It is one of the forms of self-care. There's lots of forms of self-care, but organization and staying organized is self-care. And it sets yourself up to teach joyfully every single day, because organization does give us the gift of time. It helps us plan better. It helps us be more creative. It helps us rest and rejuvenate and enjoy life. And as I say, a happy teacher is a good teacher. And if you aren't taking care of yourself, you are taking care of no one.
Amen.
So here you go. Now's your chance. It's your chance to get organized once and for all. And that's it. Thanks, Kelly, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So that's it, my teacher friends. We're out of time and I'm out of breath. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you liked today's episode, I'd love it if you'd go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave a review. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Also, you can continue the conversation online with me in my Facebook group, the Teach Joyfully Podcast Community, where elementary teachers can connect, get help, and encouragement for all kinds of education and parenting topics. You can find the show notes and links to all the resources mentioned in today's episode on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, a happy teacher is a good teacher. Until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.